We are live, right?
What?
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dragon Talk. Woo! How is it going? We have a crazy fun crew with us today. We are interviewing these fine folks. We have Dr. B.
Hi.
Dr. B!
Dr. B. That's me.
Woo! We've got Hannah Rose.
Hannah Rose!
West Coast
I
Witch.
love you, Hannah!
And Bill Benham.
ASMR with Bill Benham. We love Bill Benham.
We're so excited you guys are here.
Glad to be here.
You have made an amazing. We're glad to be here. That's the way to do it. You guys got to share the mic. It's going to be fun. I like how it's keeping it in the middle, so there, it's going to be slightly awkward for both of you.
Fight.
It's a mic fight.
Bill and Shelly are sharing the mic, and it is going to be it's crazy. So if there's any odd sounds coming from them, you know why, right? So we have had Dr. B on the podcast before. It's been a long while.
It's been about 3 years, yeah.
Wow. That's been a long while.
Yeah.
I feel like our jobs and personal lives have intersected many times, but not on microphone.
No, that's true. That's true. Actually, last time I was on was just after I started as the clinical director at Take This.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were still doing podcasts out of conference rooms.
I was going to say, I remember the exact conference room down on the first floor.
It was.
And we were just like this little scrappy little podcast
It was fun.
before we became a potty award-winning podcast.
We win all the potties
Yeah.
every day.
So many potties.
Sometimes 2 or 3 times. Ryan was there, of course, still bringing in his equipment and recording it all at the same time. It was tons of fun. I remember us being like, there's a lot of echoes in this conference room right now.
I do recall that, yes.
Yeah. It happens. But you've been doing so much great stuff since then, and one of those things is working on this adventure. I think this was one of your ideas, right?
It's certainly been something I've wanted to do for a while, but it didn't come to fruition until, credit where it's due, you and Nick Mitchell really helped push for it and got these wonderful people involved. And
Can you tell us the name of this fabulous adventure?
Yes, I can. It is called Gardens of Fog. It's available now on the DMs Guild, and it is a charity module that helps not only raise awareness for mental health, but also raise funds for Take This, which, if you don't know, is an absolutely fantastic mental health nonprofit serving the game community. In fact, the first mental health nonprofit serving the game community.
And the greatest.
Well, I think so, but I'm biased.
Just a bit.
Doesn't mean I'm wrong.
But I know, you wanted to come up with an adventure that dealt with some of the mental wellness issues around the gaming industry and to dramatize that in an adventure form. And when you were looking for writers, I was like, oh, no, this guy, Bill, he's been working on a lot of stuff. He knows mental health inside and out, I guess. And,
to an extent, yes.
And so, Bill, talk a little bit about what you do here at D&D and how you got involved.
Well, thank you, Greg. So I'm an associate producer here at D&D, which has been a fantastic job. But before that, I spent 20 years in the Army, where I was a medic and an occupational therapy technician. And then I worked in the private sector, nonprofits in healthcare, mostly addiction medicine. So when you approached me and said, hey, it's Dr. Boccamazzo, he wants to do something that's mental health focused, I kind of jumped on that. And it was probably the most challenging thing I've ever written in terms of how to strike the balance between having a fun adventure and treating the source material respectfully so that it could be both kind of clinically appropriate and educational and then fun at the same time. So it was, I often felt like I was screwing it up in one way or another, but that's why we have Hannah and Dr. B, and we worked as a team to kind of bring it all together to make it awesome. It was nerve-wracking, but it was a lot of fun.
Like any good project, right?
Indeed.
Right? And so, Hannah, you came on and we're working on the adventure, but also a really cool new subclass.
Yeah, so Dr. B approached me about creating the Psychomancer, and the Psychomancer is the mascot of Take This, and carries a little figure carrying a sword and shield, and we decided to make a cleric subclass, the mind domain, for people to play a Psychomancer and support their allies. And then Bill and I got together and was like, well, we need someone to edit this and look over it and I need someone to edit this and look over it. And so we traded and all worked on it together.
Nice.
And I think Bill did a fantastic job creating the adventure.
I think you did a fantastic job.
Lift us up where we belong.
Musical segments now on Dragon Talk.
That happens during the adventure too. There is a song where you can sing, right? No, okay. Maybe I'll run it that way.
Yeah, I think you have the freedom.
Well, we
Add
tried to
that
get
in.
a lovely bunch of coconuts in there, but I think Lawrence Welk's estate was not happy with that.
Oh man, his estate is notorious for
Yeah.
not allowing that, specifically
Unlike
in
Joe
D&D
Cocker's
adventures.
estate.
He's fine with
Totally
it.
fine with it.
He's like,
huge,
sing
huge
as-
D&D fan.
Sing as many bars as you want. We don't care.
So I love what you guys have done here. I love the idea of it. I love what it's supporting. And I imagine, though, there's a lot of different ways that you could have taken this, knowing what your goals were for it. So how did you strike that balance? Because that seems rather challenging, Bill.
So when I first got started with it, I approached it from I kind of internalizing my own experience, my own road with mental health, specifically with PTSD and depression and anxiety, those kind of three things. And I looked at how they've affected me and folks that are close to me and said, how can I take that and turn it into something that can be realized kind of in a game world in a way where it's, again, it's something that players can interact with and they can have fun with it, but it also serves the kind of educational purpose that we were looking for. And it's not too, like, I wanted it to be creepy and somewhat unsettling, but not too much so. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was what made it so hard. Because I was basically, when you confront depression and anxiety in the adventure, because you, spoiler alert, you will.
What's the good
Yeah.
like synopsis for people to go into this? Like, I don't want you to give anything away or spoil anything for anything, but like, what should people think about when they're picking up this adventure and wanting to run it? Or yeah, if Dr. B, if you want to take that too, like, how would you frame it as like a slug line? Like, what's this adventure about?
I think the thing we have, if not on the cover, then in the beginning, is that a dear friend lies stricken, trapped inside their own mind. So the players are called to the bedside of someone who not only is suffering from depression and anxiety exacerbated by their situation, but a malevolent force is feeding off of that and taking advantage of it and worsening their struggle. So the players must delve into the mindscape of their friend and aid them by confronting both the issues that the friend is facing and their own manifestations of depression and anxiety.
Oh, okay. Now I'm getting very World of Warcraft, Mr. Pandaria in my head right now, with like the Shah,
Yeah.
you know, of like the
Think about
manifestation of emotions.
Yeah, actually, that is, I would say that is appropriate. Now, what I did was I spent some time kind of breaking down, when I think of anxiety, when I think of how that makes me feel, how can I project that out? So what the players face in the adventure is my idea of what being anxious kind of taken to the 10th power would be like. Likewise with depression, but then also trying to weave in, some 5th edition mechanics so that you can actually have the satisfaction of kind of confronting it. And it's important. One thing Dr. B stressed from the beginning, and I think it's super important for anybody reading the adventure or running it, is that the point of the adventure is not to fix the friend that you're assisting. It's not to fix them. It's to help them. Because we, as a society, we get kind of looped into the whole, all right, well, you're going to take a pill, you're going to do a thing, and you're fixed. Done.
Right.
And that's not what mental health is about. Mental health is a journey. It's like it's work, and it's part of its relationship building. And sure, there's medication and there's clinical practice and everything, but it's something that you do throughout your life, not something like, all right, well, I did the thing and it's over now.
And it's
we're
not
good.
something that someone else can come in and fix for you.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And that's one of the things we really tried to emphasize subtly, in some cases not so subtly, with this module, is this idea that going in with a problem-solving attitude towards people who are struggling with mental health issues is often counterproductive. Like, for you or anybody who's ever been in distress and doesn't know what to do about it, they go to a friend, and that friend immediately starts problem solving, and here's what you should do, here's what you should
Have you
do.
tried yoga?
Oh, God.
It's the cure for everything.
Well, it sends a subtle message that I know better than you. I can
Yeah.
fix your problems. Why can't you? And it ends up being counterproductive. So instead, we approach this with the idea of going in with empathy and validation and being able to sit with people as opposed to problem solving and subtly teaching some of those skills in the process.
And unlike the Shaw and Mr. Pandaria, you do some role playing. So you can just fight your way through this adventure, absolutely. But that's going to be super challenging and actually harder, both mechanically and maybe even emotionally, than confronting and role playing certain aspects of this fight,
Interesting.
this journey.
Did you write it, or did you write it? Did you guys plan it that way on purpose?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay. So we are going to be facing things and role playing,
Yes.
as opposed to just going in there with swords ablazing and just fighting whatever
The
comes our
groups-
way.
The groups that have played it on stream, Tales from the Mists and Hyper RPG, have
Who
done
did a fantastic job.
yeah,
nice.
have done an amazing job of that so far. I mentioned this on Todd Talks, but one of the unexpected things I really love about this adventure is it's a great opportunity for parties to have to kind of reveal their character secrets and go through things that are emotional and personal. And I really love that because it's fun to have character secrets, but as a player, you also want that to come out and want to interact with the rest of the party about that. And this offers a great opportunity for that.
That is really cool.
That's super cool. What level is this for?
Was it
What did we decide
tier
on?
1?
It's
tier
it's
one.
for like 1st to 4th level characters, but big nod to the Mistwalkers and TK, who kind of up leveled it to like I think 8th level.
Are they have they
Something
leveled
like
up
that.
7th level?
7th
maybe,
level.
but
Either
yeah,
way.
it's super easy to scale up.
And by the way, they did a fantastic.
Oh my goodness,
job
yes.
with
Yeah.
that. Not that Hyper RPG didn't, but
Everybody did a great
everybody
job.
did a great job. But
Love
I-
lift us up.
We were watching TK DM it, and we all know the adventure backwards and forwards. I've done like 6 passes on editing and designing, and TK was still giving me chills, and I was sitting on the edge of my seat.
That voice.
Yeah,
Oh, some of that creepy voice. And I won't say to what part, but oof,
it worked. And the flamingo.
the flamingo.
Flamingos? Sold. Now I'm really into it. I can't help but think about it, like how great this would be for kids to be able, kids who are dealing with anxiety, like my own, who are like a way for him to like face off against anxiety, or to like the way for him to like a creative way for him to conquer what he's feeling inside. I have mentioned it before on a podcast. I got him this really good book called Hey Warrior. Have you heard of that one?
No, but I want to know
It's
more
really
about
good.
it now.
It's like it teaches kids about depression and anxiety in like a really kid-friendly way. Like in a way though that when I was reading, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. That's so interesting. But like it's like, hey, this anxiety is just like this part of your brain that actually you need, and you need it in certain times, and sometimes it just like triggers when you didn't need it, and you just have to be like, hey, buddy, like it's cool, we're good here, like it kind of teaches them role playing anyway, or to like how to like personify what's happening in their brains, and then like being able in their childlike way to talk to it and to talk it down, and then you are the one in control of it. And I actually just ordered him another book today about like freeing your child of anxiety.
Did you order Gardens of Fog?
I'm about to. Now that I know there's flamingos in it. But I'm just wondering like if there's like elements of it, it's probably too advanced for a 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old. But if there's elements of it I can pull out.
I think there
And
are.
then-
I think it would be pretty intense.
Yeah.
Especially as a 2 to 3 hour adventure for a 5 to 6-year-old. But I think there are absolutely themes and situations that you can pull out.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's probably a little too, and yeah, like Hannah said, it's probably a little too intense for as it's written. But you could certainly adapt certain elements of it, add a little bit more humor to it, and make it completely appropriate for, a young child.
I'm really interested in the idea of like not not necessarily encouraging combat, right? Because that's such a thing that is, can be ingrained in some parties of people playing Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, if there's a fight or there's a problem, I hit it with my sword, and then everything goes away. And I like that you guys are encouraging ways around problems, or perhaps just dealing or integrating them into your lives. That I think is something that's really helpful. Even I don't even notice, but when Shelly was talking about it, she's saying conquering and like defeating the anxiety within you, and you're like, well, that's kind of like
learning to live with it.
yes, exactly.
Well, and that's something we wanted to be cognizant of when we were building all this, because how do you defeat a part of you without hurting you?
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. Shelly, you brought up the idea of fear being adaptive. Well, fear is adaptive. It keeps you safe. Anxiety is fear blaring alarms all the time. And so how do you negotiate that? And that's part of the reason we made this a much more role-playing heavy module to deal with the fact that, well, you're dealing with you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to hurt you.
Right. We can't just blow up the mindscape of your friend, because that would be bad.
It would be bad.
I mean, I think they tried that in,
Inner space? No, wait.
No, no, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And what
yes.
happens when you basically excise certain parts of you? It goes wrong.
It does not work out. So let's talk a little bit about the Psychomancer, because that is a really awesome aspect of this. I have a plushie Psychomancer at my desk that I think you brought when we had that interview 3 years ago. So it's been proudly displayed since then. What was it like creating this subclass to get into the mind of adventurers?
We talked a lot about Take This and the mission of Take This and the Psychomancer representing that. And we wanted the Psychomancer to be advocating, help people help themselves, right, in the way that a mental health counselor or therapist would do, to support their party through difficult times and support and promote mental and emotional wellness. So there's actually a good bit of lore that goes along with the Psychomancer subclass. We talked about kind of the god, the deity, because it's a cleric subclass, and the history of that. And there's actually a little Easter egg in there where the first Psychomancer, their name is an anagram of Mark Klein, who's the founder of Take This.
yes.
Yeah, he's my predecessor, the first clinical director.
I know Mark. Mark is great. He's been doing I was there when we were founding Take This, and Dr. Klein was an amazing columnist at the publication I worked at. So that was really cool. I'm glad that you got to have that in there. Is it Mark Klein?
No,
or
it's
just Klein?
Mari Klein.
Ah, nice.
Yeah,
I
so
love that.
anagram of Mark Klein. And Dr. B and I just sat down and talked about, we looked at the cleric subclasses and what level and what kind of features they get abilities at, and created a list of domain spells. So some of them are utility, like Rary's telepathic bond, to promote, communication, but also some combat-focused ones, defensive and support, like Shield of Faith.
What is their channel divinity kind of ability?
I really like the channel divinity ability. So
This was all Hannah.
Nice.
we collaborated.
The channel
on it.
divinity, this was you.
We came up with a bunch of options, but the one we settled on was that they can, as their action, use their channel divinity and give the allies around them a bonus to wisdom saving throws that last for 1 minute. So they, bolster the spirits and mental fortitude and defenses of their allies that helps them protect themselves then against being frightened or charmed from other effects.
Nice. And I bet there's a lot of those effects in this adventure.
Maybe.
A little bit.
A little bit.
I mean, wisdom saving throws are pretty common to anything,
That's
right?
true.
That's a big deal.
That's awesome. Cool. So people who pick up this adventure can, even if you're not running this, you can still use this subclass.
Yeah, absolutely. You can make a Psychomancer NPC, which does appear in the adventure, or you can play as a Psychomancer.
Cool.
I'm actually really looking forward to playing as a Psychomancer. Once we got this more down on paper, I was like, oh my god, this looks so much fun. I really want to do this.
This is going to be your character that you go to one-shots with.
I may start doing that. Yeah, I may break away from monks and bards and play a cleric for like the first time ever.
Do it. I want to
you.
hear also if you create a Psychomancer character, tell us about it. Tag
Please,
us on Twitter. We want to
please.
hear about it.
Yeah, but one of the cool things, and we mentioned this on Todd Talks, was the idea that we basically wanted to make the Psychomancer the therapist of the D&D world, and as such, we incorporated certain ethical qualities behind it. The American Psychological Association actually has aspirational principles, two of them being beneficence and non-maleficence. Basically, you need to work for the benefit of those around you.
Do no harm.
Yeah,
essentially.
that's one of the codes that's like the only code that most of my colleagues and I know by number. But
What's the number?
3.04.
And it's in like the
AP
ethics code?
Yeah, the AP
oh my
ethics
God,
code.
that's awesome.
But the
Don't put 3.04 this, man.
No, well, I may have said that to a colleague at one point. But you have to act with beneficence and non-maleficence. You have to act with for the good of your party. Otherwise, you could lose your cleric powers.
Yeah. Well, what I like about what you just said, though, too, because I'm running a Waterdeep campaign right now, and I'm like, oh my God, there should be Psychomancer NPCs set up in the cities, and they're not necessarily being, hey, here's the psychiatrist type thing, but it's like, hey, here's where you go when you have problems, or like when you find, maybe the Dung Sweepers Guild when they find folks on the street, they're like, oh, here, you need to go to the Psychomancer, and that's how you will learn to deal with whatever is plaguing you.
I would love to see that happen.
That's so awesome. I'm gonna do it. It's already added. Do it.
How when you said you have to act on the good of your party, or you'll lose your cleric powers? I never played clerics, but for like obvious reasons. But I'm not good in emergencies. But how is that different than a regular cleric? Like, aren't they always kind of acting by the good of their party?
Not necessarily. You might be thinking of like a paladin who follows their strict code of ethics.
But then their code of ethics could be like their tool, to like the was it the Oath of Conquest, I think. So it's like they're not going to be helpful all the time. Or like if I'm a cleric, let's say I'm a cleric of a life cleric of a good deity, and I go and I do something really not nice to my party members or to somebody else, I still get to be a cleric of that deity. There might be some DM repercussions, but with the Psychomancer, like it specifically states in there, like, if I do something that hurt one of my party members willfully or do something along those lines, then I don't get to have my Psychomancer powers anymore because it contravenes what I'm trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what the god of Dr. Klein. What was it called again?
Mericlen.
Mericlen.
Or the first Psychomancer.
Oh, okay. He's the first Psychomancer.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
Not the god, or is he?
No.
He's okay.
Well, they are the first Psychomancer and became a deity.
I see. I see. So is that where the Psychomancer gets the powers from? Oh, all right. So yeah, Thera Klein is like no, not
So
so
the
much.
Psychomancer.
Disbarred. No, what is it called for
Where you lose your
doctors? Yeah.
license.
What's that called?
Well, you just lose your license.
Dislicensed.
Dislicensed. Yes.
But
I'm a little disturbed by clerics now, but that's
and this was a
know.
really deliberate discussion on Hannah and my part, that given some of the mind-based powers that the Psychomancers have, I mean, it's literally the mind domain. Think about some of the powers that exist within D&D and some of the selfish, like Charm Person. Like how many selfish uses could a person do with Charm Person? And given that we really wanted to put an element of consent and help into the character of the Psychomancer, because when you do therapy, there has to be a lot of consent. You need to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And, because of the power differential in therapy, that could go wrong if a therapist abuses their authority and their power. And the same thing we wanted to put into the Psychomancer. So they can't use these mind-based powers selfishly or for evil pursuits.
So is it up to the DM to police this?
Yes.
Okay. And now, speaking of the Dungeon Master, what do they need to know running this adventure? Is there any tips that you would give to a DM to really harness the power of this awesomeness?
Yes. One of them being talk with your players beforehand, because this could tap into some stuff. You, again, with consent, go in, check out different safety procedures in terms of playing, the X card being one of the more popular ones, lines and veils being another one. But check with your limits of your players and talk to them about what they're going to divulge, what they're not going to divulge, because as Hannah pointed out, this really is a deep dive into some character stuff. And, you can't help but put a little bit of yourself in your character. So this may churn up some emotions. But also as the DM, watch the language that you use. It's really easy for us in everyday life to use adjectives like crazy or this is insane. But those are subtle cues that you may not be too keen on open on mental health issues. And so just watch your language as you do that. Things like, oh my God, I'm so OCD. Cut that out.
Right. Just because you're neatening up your desk doesn't mean you're OCD.
I mean, there's a difference between picky and fastidious and having a diagnosable condition. And if you've ever met somebody who struggles with OCD, it really is a struggle and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And so just as a DM, watch that kind of language.
We also talk about in the introduction to the adventure, right? This is not a module for you to give your friends therapy. You don't try to be your friend's therapist by running this adventure.
Consent, don't do it. And especially if you're not a professional, don't be a therapist.
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, though, what are the benefits of running this for your friends and for your group? Like, those are the caveats. What makes it exciting and able to investigate these issues? Bill?
Well, like Hannah said earlier, it's an opportunity. Like if you want to set up where you want to give the characters an opportunity to divulge some kind of more deeply held information that maybe the player wants to get out there, but there hasn't been a good platform for it. Because, well, there was that one time, and then you just kind of launch into it. That doesn't really have a lot of gravity. But if you want to make it a part of this adventure, well, then it can kind of come out organically and help kind of deepen I see it as a way to deepen the bonds of a party and help them become closer together. Or you could use, if you're a DM, you could use it as a plot point where maybe something comes out that, wow, it introduces an element of friction between two of the players, or two of the characters, sorry. But that's how I look at it.
That's really interesting because I have, in the aforementioned Waterdeep campaign that I'm running, range of experience levels of people who have played D&D before in there, and we had gotten to a point and we discussed last time we got together, you guys didn't really, I don't really know what you want to do. They're a little bit like, hey, what should we do, DM? And I'm giving them all these hooks, and they're not, they're like, I don't really, where's this adventure going? And I'm like, well, you guys, you didn't invest, do the upfront of where is your character? So they just kind of came with a blank slate and they haven't developed it much since then. And so I'm wondering if an adventure like this might, increase, have some familial bonds or create some kind of story that has emotional impact because they went in with a very, kind of cookie cutter character creation.
I think the adventure itself creates a session with a lot of emotional impact. And if players are craving or up for that kind of intense role playing and a very emotional session, then this really delivers.
Yeah. I don't know if they're up for that.
Maybe you
but
just
I
get
might,
the players to invest in something before their characters can invest.
Right, exactly. I might convince their players to do it, just to not necessarily convince, but be like, hey, I think this is going to be good because it will introduce some of the emotional elements that we were talking about before. And if you're not okay with it, obviously we can always stop. But here's one idea to make that happen. And actually, now I'm thinking about it, I have a player who dropped out. Because of scheduling issues, and I might use that character as the one that is having these issues, and then they have to. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the other thing is, right, the adventure presents a character who is struggling with their issues, but you can make that anyone in your campaign. You can use an NPC, you can use a family member of one of the characters, somebody who's close to them, who they care about.
Yeah.
And, part of the reason we specifically chose anxiety and depression as part of this is because their mood disorders and anxiety disorders are the two most common diagnoses. One of the statistics that people don't know is that 1 in 2 people in the United States will be diagnosed in their lifetime, and the most common ones are anxiety disorders because there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
But mood disorders coming in second.
Because there are just so many things to be anxious about.
Well, listen, we can talk about all the existential angst I feel after this. But that's part of the, and we wanted to present how ordinary it is.
Yeah.
This is not in the module. It's not some heroic knight who's been crusading for 20 years. It's a farmer. It's someone who struggles with mundane things, and Hannah's right. That brings a certain adaptability to the game. That I gotta say, Tales from the Mist. Boy, did they incorporated that in really well.
Nice. I can't wait to watch that. I like that. I mean, that's part of your tenets of Take This, in a certain extent, is to allow for the stigmas of talking about mental health and mental wellness be removed from gaming, because so many of the stories that we deal with are just heroes and they're fine and they live through the most traumatic experiences of their life, and then the next day they're like, let's go do it again, and they don't ever have the moments to dwell or to self-examine. And so I like that this adventure is a way to do that.
That could be a hard balance to strike, right? In order to have your campaign be fun, having your characters have to deal with severe PTSD from, being in a war is probably not my cup of tea, but I think especially as I play more D&D and as I get older, I want to delve into some of those themes more in a limited way.
Yeah.
And really recognize that the things the characters are dealing with are serious and have emotional impact.
So, question for all of you. When you're about to start a new adventure, do you create a new character or do you use a character that you've played before?
It kind of depends. Like, there's one cleric that I've remade 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, who, like, he's kind of like an old, comfortable pair of sweatpants. You can, it's just kind of fun. Other times, I want to make someone that's kind of specific to, like, I'm getting ready to start a Ghost of Saltmarsh game, so I made someone that very specifically has ties to the sea and that area, because it gives the DM a lot to work with, and plus it helps me kind of, role play as we go along. So that's where I'm at.
I usually create new characters for a long-term campaign, especially so that the DM can work in their background and they can go on that journey. But I play, characters I have in my back pocket for one-shots. On Sunday, I'm going to be playing Mistress of Modules, and Celeste Conowitch is running James Intricasso's Planet of the Tarrasques.
Ooh.
So the character I'm playing, who's a Tabaxi monk, has actually taken down a Tarrasque before during a Origins game. So I'm looking forward to playing her again. But for long-term campaigns, I always create a new character.
Yeah, same answer as Hannah. If I was doing a one-shot, then, I'll play. I've got loads of characters already loaded onto D&D Beyond. I'll just pick one and just scale it to whatever appropriate level. But long-term, I love having new characters.
Smash that random character button.
That's
the best. That's my go-to.
20
You
characters
just
that
create
we wanna
random
play.
characters?
Yeah.
For
I've
one-shots?
been, actually, recently that's what I've done. Or if someone, they tell me what level range it is, I'll just see if I have something in that level range in my library of stuff that I've made. But now that I've been doing, random character generators with Kate, that list is getting bigger and bigger. So I have plenty to choose from.
So the reason why I ask that is you kind of touched on this a little bit, is for this type of adventure, would I be, because I have a lot of characters, a lot of them that I've played for a while, and I'm sure there's stuff in their backstories that would be really interesting to discover playing this, like things that I kind of feel like I know why she's this way.
Do it.
Or is it better for me to create a character for this adventure that knowing I'm going to create her with these types of things in her background that I want to put out there and then see how they play out, or should it be the element of discovery? How do I create a character for this?
What do you want to do?
I don't know. I guess
How do you want to do this?
How do you want to do this? I think if I were to create a character specifically for this, how would you guide me into doing that? I don't know.
I would say that the important thing is that the DM be really familiar with your character and their backstory and the issues that might come up for them. So playing a character that, from a long-term campaign that the DM already knows is good, but if you're playing a new character, then hopefully the DM is ready for an info dump that you can give them about the character.
So I should be creating a backstory of what kinds of things would I be putting in there that are going to help propel this adventure forward or help make, this, what do I need in there?
Or having an agreement with your DM, depending on your style and their style, that they can kind of decide things about your character and bring things up for your character that maybe you don't even know about.
That's what I was wondering too. Does the DM have that? Is that good for the DM to do, to be like unearthing things that maybe you didn't realize were there?
I would say as long as, like Dr. B mentioned earlier about boundaries.
Right.
As long as there's a good understanding between you and the DM and that, personal and professional boundaries are respected, I think it would be great. The way I envisioned it was that, like, there is not a placeholder NPC, but the NPC that's there is if you're going to run it as a one-shot. But if it works great if you can take and drop someone in there and you've been playing established characters so that the DM can kind of, and the players can kind of weave those storylines together a little more tightly.
I think it's interesting also, Dr. B, when you said you don't run this to be a therapist for your friends, and if you're not a therapist, you really shouldn't be doling out that.
No, that's illegal to be a therapist when you're not one.
You're not one, so I feel like that is a good reminder for DMs and for players that if the DM is using something that they see in your character as purely as a story hook, like you can't take that as like, you think I'm OCD or like whatever, like, it's got to have, there's a lot of balance. And like you said, there's a lot of trust in running something like this.
And
Absolutely.
need to talk about it before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
About what kind of game you want to have and what things you're okay with the DM doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with something as emotionally heavy as this. So Kate Welch was on one of Take This's panels last year at PAX West, and she talked a lot about aftercare, especially for really emotionally intense storylines. And, I think this is one of those things, if you have enough trust in your DM and they're good enough with improvisational, topics, then totally you could just bring a new character and throw that at them. But again, as long as you have that trust between the two of you, that would be great. But I love the idea of really exploring an established character, especially if your DM has the knives to stick in their back. And
So I know that a lot of therapists use role playing.
we're working on that.
Like in session, like, is this similar to how it would be? Because I'm thinking like, oh, if Dr. B was my DM, like he could just see all sorts of things. Like, oh my god, like immediately, just from like the way I pick my dice up, you'd be like, what
Yeah,
is
I'm
going on
totally
with that?
judging you all the time.
Treating,
We don't do
judging,
that.
no. But I think like I would be totally into having a therapist that's like, let's do it this way. Like,
I'll run one for you.
I would be totally open to your keen observation.
Not the judgments,
Do you
but the
take
observations.
insurance?
I actually don't see people anymore.
What?
Well, I'm traveling so much with Take This. I was gone like 2.5 weeks in March doing, I forget how many talks. I can't have a caseload.
No, that would be bad for your patients.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm
I
sometimes
need to
gone
get in.
half the month.
I'm just curious how like it would work with role playing in an actual
In a therapeutic environment?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so theoretically speaking, there have been therapy techniques that are role-playing based used for a century or more. And when Dr. Megan Connell and I train clinicians on how to use this stuff therapeutically, we actually work backwards from the way most people think. The model that she and I created, it doesn't take role-playing games first and then shove them into therapy settings. You take established therapeutic interventions and adapt the role-playing to those. So it's actually theoretically based. We've got a whole day long working on a 2-day-long training. I'm happy to talk to you all about it later because I could literally go on for this for an entire day.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's what she wants. She wants
Book them now.
we got 3 days.
I actually think we're giving a 3-hour presentation on that at GameholeCon.
That's
I'm
awesome.
looking forward to that.
Yes.
Yeah, on the last day of GameholeCon when everybody's just going to be asleep.
That's when you need aftercare the most. I think that's something that's very important, and maybe even just for the running of this adventure too, to think about is that build in some time to discuss afterwards. You don't want to
Yes.
necessarily play up until 2 a.m. and be like, all right, see you guys later, bye. You know, you want to have it be a situation where the story can be resolved, and then the group can talk about it, right?
And in fact, on all of the streams that groups are running of this adventure, we have a therapist coming in, a licensed mental health professional coming in, and doing a little debrief afterwards.
Yeah.
So Dr. Megan Cannell, who is actually a guest on Tales from the Mist, joined that group after the stream to debrief and discuss it.
I love that.
Yeah, just basically have a mental health discussion of the themes that are presented, and also to talk about how while we did try and represent these mental health themes artistically and compassionately and stigma-free, obviously anxiety is not caused by what it's caused in the module.
Right. You don't have actual demons inside you, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, that, at least not to my knowledge, but I don't know.
Well, even in the module, it is caused by mundane things, then exacerbated.
Right.
But still.
Yeah, and that was an important thing I know we wanted to depict, is this idea that we all have existing vulnerabilities to mental health stressors, and then environmental things can take it over the top.
Well, I've got a potentially challenging question, but I'm going to throw it out to you guys. So, a lot of the warnings and caveats here that you're throwing out, I feel like many groups might be like, well, it's just not for my group. And I wonder if there's a way to run this in a way that, obviously you still have all the consent and the safety protocols in place, but you don't necessarily say, like, we're going to get into some deep shit tonight, right? Like, you kind of make it more like the escapism module that most D&D modules are like, but you're dealing with some of these issues in a way and presenting it to an audience that may, if you presented it as, like, we're going to get into some mental health, they would say, like, no, I don't want to do that. But you could, basically I'm saying, can you trick your party into doing this in a way that would get these messages across about mental health that they may not be receptive to if you just put them on as a bold face? So there's a challenging question there. What do you guys think?
I'd say yes. Like, you absolutely can take the adventure, not really give like the mental health preface, and just go with the theme, which is, you have a friend, there's something causing problems, and you're going to enter basically a dreamscape, and you're going to help solve the problem because that's what adventurers do. You could totally do that and allow it to...
As long as you have existing safety tools with your group, I think.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And then you allow these things to kind of come up organically in the course of play. But I like the idea of prefacing it
Just a little bit.
But you wouldn't have to.
I think you could also read the module and pull out some of the themes and monsters and things that happen, and maybe put them in another adventure in a slightly different form.
Yeah.
Because there are people who play D&D just to mess around with their
fun.
friends,
Absolutely.
right? And you don't want to necessarily make it like, well, this is the after school special version of D&D that, they may be like, well, screw that. I want to kill the dragon like we always do. Like, why do we have to do something that's so different? And I feel like that is counter to what your goals are for this thing, is just to try to get people to talk about these issues a little bit more.
Yes and no. I mean, even if people are just considering these issues, they're already doing more than they were before.
Right.
Even if they, this doesn't have to be a very special D&D episode where Blossom talks about whatever for the 8th time.
Right.
But
I'm so excited. I'm so scared.
Oh, God.
That's Saved by the Bell episode.
We're going Jesse Spano.
Yeah,
okay,
I had
wow.
to. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's eminently
They're
quotable.
just being old together, kids.
Yeah, no, we're
Stop
old.
watching.
We're old. But you can go in as deeply and with as much reverence as you want, or you can keep it light and keep an adventure. And hey, you learn some actual interpersonal skills that are helpful along the way.
Yeah. I like that. Take what you can from it.
Yeah.
And one of the best things about the adventure is actually the volume of resources that Dr. B included in the adventure. So it's like, hey, if you want to, if this brings something up and you want to talk to somebody about it, here's a list of people you can contact and their websites. So,
And within the adventure itself, the Psychomancer NPC can appear and aid or advise the players, player characters, right? So if the players are really floundering and don't know what to do and don't know how to kind of role play out helping, the characters
Clippy,
in trouble.
the NPC shows up.
Jeremy Crawford gives you advice on D&D rules.
In my mind, it's Ron Howard narrating.
It's always Morgan Freeman for me, but
You choose your own narrator.
They tried to fight anxiety. They thought they won. They hadn't.
It's inside of all of you. That's the answer. So you guys are mentioning a whole bunch of places where you can check out groups who have played this. Let's go through those again and then talk about where people can get this adventure.
So the groups that have played it already have been Tales from the Mists. They actually premiered it on the 15th, and thank you for doing so.
Yeah.
Hyper RPG played it on the 18th, and they just did a stellar job doing a one-shot. This Saturday, Rivals of Waterdeep, they're going to be doing it.
I'm really excited to see
Yeah,
that.
and I believe they're going to bring in Dr. Denise Morales, a psychologist that Take This has worked with, and they're going to have a discussion about mental health afterwards.
Awesome.
And then after that, Clinical Role, we're going to be having a discussion of it since we're all mental health folks.
Seems to make sense.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that next Monday for an hour before we play our regular game. And then I believe on the 29th, Mistress of Modules is going to be running it as well.
Awesome. All right. Look for all of that in the show notes for those of you listening in podcast form, and links on where to watch all that. And then where can people find the adventure?
on the DMs Guild.
That's right.
You pull up DMs Guild and put in Gardens of Fog. It,
Do you have to put the "us" in there?
you don't have to put the us.
Well, unless you want to practice your pilot voice. So just like,
We're
there you go. There you go. The trailing. There you
look
go.
out to the right. You'll see Gardens of Fog on the DMs Guild.
Hey, Mom, look, there's Gardens of Fog. Let's download it from the DMs Guild right now.
And that does that's the adventure. It does come with the Psychomancer subclass, and all the proceeds go to Take This. So it's a worthy spend.
And if you like it, leave a review. Let us know. Tell us about your Psychomancer characters. We'd love to
Please.
hear.
Yes.
Awesome. And how can people get in touch with you fine folks to ask you questions about how to run it, or how to play the Psychomancer, or how to be mentally healthy?
You can reach me at bill.benham2. I don't know who bill.benham1 is, but when I find him, it's on. Because he took that from me. But yeah, bill.benham2 on Twitter. Feel free to DM me or just drop me a mention. I will be happy to talk with you about it.
You can find me online at Wild Rose Mage on Twitter and Instagram.
You should totally follow her.
I called out Greg earlier for not following me.
I swear I had. I'm going to do it right now.
It was a Twitter algorithm that took it away, right?
It feels like that.
You can find Take This at TakeThisOrg on both Twitter and Facebook. You can find me at the Dr. B. That's TheeDoctorB as in boy on Twitter. And you can always check out some resources at takethis.org.
Nice. All of the things. I just followed you again. I'm following everyone. Everyone should be following Wild Rose Mage because you do great stuff.
Oh, thanks.
She's amazing.
Making the things happen, including work on the aforementioned D&D books
Yes.
that have been out
I
there.
think the one I could talk about is Descent into Avernus, which I edited part of. And then I've got a bunch of other projects happening this summer.
There's lots of things. All the things we're very excited about. I like how you were like the one I can talk about. So people are like, what are the ones you can't talk about? Boom, boom, boom.
We will cut the mic if she tries talking about other people, so don't.
That's not true. We're not that
We would
sophisticated.
not cut the mic.
There's actually a big guy off to the side of the screen who's going to spear tackle her if she starts talking about
Ryan
If I
would
so much
kill
as
us if we
mention the
cut the
code
mic.
name.
Just literally cut it. Right. The big person
really
is
slowly while she's still talking.
is the Nathan Stewart, VP of
Oh
D&D.
yeah, Nathan's big promotion.
We got rhyming acronyms here. VP of D&D. I
Yep.
like it.
That's why they had to promote him.
It just made sense.
It doesn't make sense
Yeah.
otherwise.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I love all the work that you've done for Take This, and then specifically about this adventure and bringing it to life. It's amazing. I can't wait to read it and watch all of the dramatizations of it out there. And would love to encourage those of you out in the multiverse to stream it or talk about your experiences, and make sure to tag all these fine folks in those discussions.
Please destigmatize mental health. By all means.
Yeah,
It's,
let's get talking about it.
And be as healthy as you can going forward. I don't know what that.
Was that like Bob Ross?
There was a little bit
That was
happy,
Bob-
happy trees.
Bob
We're
Rossi,
happy mental
our new
health.
tagline.
I'm gonna bring
Happy
my
mental
squirrel
Happy
here
little
for
health.
everyone to. You want to feed my squirrel?
That sounds dirty.
Did you steal this? Did you steal the squirrel from Twiggy?
Yes, I did. It's my squirrel now. Wait, no. Who's Twiggy?
Deborah Ann Wall's character.
Oh yes, it is. Yes, it's because we wanted to give a nice home here in Seattle. So
He's
that
on tour.
More visiting could happen. Thank you guys so much. We are going to be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to take a break here on the Twitches as we say goodbye to these folks and get ready to do our banter / intro outro recording. We got to go do 2,
I know.
or 6 segments because we got to do the intro,
yeah,
outro,
we do.
and
We not
mid-tro
much banter.
for 2 episodes. We
All
got to,
business.
we're all warmed up now, so that's okay though. Right,
And
Shelly?
we actually know how this interview went. So
Exactly. We don't have to make it up like we
can
usually
talk
do.
about how great it
Wasn't that a great interview?
that
Sorry.
was so informative.
That's usually what we say.
But
and
now
it's,
we can really say it.
it's almost
and
always
mean
true.
it.
That's the thing.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, because
we know how to run an interview.
We're psychomancers of the mind domain. All right, thanks you guys. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Let's say
Bye.
goodbye to these guys. Thank you. Yay!
Thanks for having us.
Yay!